Hakan Norling, who's my colleague in Sweden. So we're going to do a bit of a double act. I'm going to do the first bit. I'm going to flip over to Hakan, and he'll tell me to move slides, and then I'll do the middle bit, and Hakan will do the end. So this is, yes, as David was saying, Bentley OpenRail 2 brackets. I don't know, A New Hope or something like that. Closed brackets. So we did one about a year-ish ago on 2023 version, but things have moved on a lot since then. So let's just move these on a bit. So as I said, it's going to be me, it's going to be Hakan, and this is just what's new in OpenRail Designer 2024, which is not out yet. Quick disclaimer statement, we have to say this because we're a shareholder company now, so any release plans and timelines are forward-looking estimates, projections only, and therefore we can't assure that we'll be able to meet these estimates, and don't make purchases based on forward-looking roadmaps, usual stuff. So I'll do the general, and then we'll talk about rail specifically. So in this 24 build, which is not out yet, it's going to be out end of the year, before the end of the year. We're planning on late October, but things change, but we're still on schedule for that. So what we've been working on, and this is just not just us for rail specifically, it's across the board. So there's a lot of new geometry stuff has gone on, which is obviously applicable to rail as well. Modeling rail, reporting, security is always a bit of a headache. So with 1,000+ bugs, we've focused on stability. It's always one of our big things. So we've increased a lot of stuff on speed as well. And a lot of the service cases, the enhancements and stuff have been resolved. That's just a general, where we are. We're going to build on MicroStation 24. It's not yet released yet, or 24.0.0.1 is not released. The bits below are just on the current MicroStation. So we added some GIS stuff, projections on the fly, editing was a lot faster, multi-printing, Excel integration. So just generic highlights from what was in 23 MicroStation, really, but nothing too wonderful. Last week we were doing a virtual conference in the USA, and we were talking about road and rail. So road has obviously been updated and will be released at the same time. So these are some of the things we share. So the analyze point tool has now been added to, and I think we do speed and count if we didn't do before, but keep it there. As you can, in the old BRT, you could do the tracking horizontal point where it was, what it was now, and you can actually display the text. Now you can do that as well in here. There's a new contour elevation tool, which is really cool, from 2D graphics to 3D. That's neat. Geometry, completely rebuilt the complex redefine tool. And again, that does or may affect what we do in rail, and we'll be using it anyway. But that is complete. We had a few problems with what we call intervals, and it wasn't, you have to remove the interval to get it to work. Now it knows what it's doing. There's a new alignment replacer tool. We've improved the 2D, 3D point integration. There's a bunch of new snap icons. The snaps haven't changed, but now we tell it, because all this stuff is ruled, it's a good idea to know what that rule is when I was trying to show on one of the movies, when you click on it, on a line or whatever, it'll tell you what it's snapped to and what the rule is. Drone production, a bit more on there. Geo, I'm not a geo guy, but we've done a lot of OpenRail integration. So that's geotechnical stuff. A lot of drainage stuff and more. But that's just kind of the road and rail. So we all get those. If you're running rail, you're going to get all these as well anyway. So with that, I'm going to flip over and I'm going to pass you over to Hakan to talk about what we've done in the world of profiles.
All right, thank you very much, Robert. Yeah, as Robert said, the geometry part of the development is a very important part for us, both in rail and road. So there is a lot more around geometry development done than we will be looking at today, as Robert just mentioned there. So if you go to the next slide, please. So one of the things that we have done for the profile is to be able to show the profile models east to west or right to left. if we are designing the plan geometries and those are going east to west, by default, the profile models were shown left to right or west to east. So what we've done in the view properties, we've added a switch there, right to left. And also in the profile models, the annotation on the annotation groups, those are not affected by this new development. So we can still use the old ones in the profile model, even if we run it right to left. Another thing at the bottom of the screen where you see the tabular annotations, so the header, if we can call it that, previously they were always placed on the left-hand side. So now we can choose to place it left, right, or both sides. So it's an option there added to the annotation groups for that. So if you run the video, so here we got a profile and it's designed east to west. So we got the lower stations on the right, and by default, the profile model there is shown left to right. So if we use this new switch, very simple, it basically flips the profile model, and now we got the low stations to the right, and the direction is then synchronized with the plan view. So they're both going in the same direction. If we take a quick look at this one by creating drawings, so if we are using the name boundaries and cut drawings, the same switch is there, right to left. If we tick that one, all the drawing sheets will then start from east going west, and the low stations will be on the right-hand side there. All right, so next slide. New development, we call it multi-profiles, and this is not a single tool, it's more a range of tools and functionalities. So the reason why we did it, it's not an easy or an efficient way to compare and analyze and look at the interaction of multiple profile in the same view at the same time. So the presentation of this multi-profile, we divided it up in 3 slides, and the first one is called setting up the model, and that's exactly what it is. So it will create a new internal model, and within that model, it's very similar to your profile model, but it will call the multi-profile model. And all the profile geometries within that model will be projected. However, one of them will be the reference one, or the primary geometry. And that will be projected to itself, if we can describe it that way. And all the other profiles will be projected onto that. So if you run the video, Rob, there we got 2 regressed geometries, up and down main, and we got a crossover. So we've got a simple case. So if you run the tool of multiple profiles and select the up main, we have then the option then to add the down and the crossover and whatever geometries we are having access to. We can limit the range of them, and we can also set a different symbology to them. So by doing that, and also using the exaggeration tools in the profile model there, also the manipulators are visible within these models. We can do some minor edits to change the geometry a little bit. Another thing, if we got like this one here, a bridge deck, or any points or areas of interest, we can even draw that with just standard CAD tools. And if we do so and use a tool we call zones and promote those to be a zone, we can then project those into the multi-profile model. So the little red line up to the left there is the projection of the bridge deck, and the white one down in the right is the projection of that CAD elements that we just manually put in. So that could be points of interest or areas of interest that we can sort of project in to that reference profile within the profile model. So let's take the next one. Right, so next is tracking and analysis. So we created a user interface or a dialog box, which will contain all the profiles we got projected into that multi-profile model, and which are visible in that model. So if you run the video, so there we got the model that we just created. And if you bring up the tracking and analysis tool, this one will follow your cursor. So wherever your cursor is, there is a indication of that with the red vertical line, and the yellow dots is basically the reading points of where the cursor is located. And it's not just vertical information, it's also horizontal information. So we've got horizontal offsets, and we got horizontal curve radius, curve lengths, and so on. And you can use an interval. So if we set an interval, it basically snaps to that interval along that geometry. And if we use a view filter, we can put in a threshold value of something that we're interested in. So right now we are looking for any lifts which are negative, basically lowers. So the red band at the bottom of the screen there indicates where that condition is true. So we can even drive this a little bit further and go into one of the columns here and set up a criteria specific for that column. So we're using the offset between the verticals. And if we set plus and minus 100, and the values will be colored red within the dialog box where that condition is true. So it's just another way to highlight threshold values of interest. And of course, this dialog box is a bit long, but we can customize what we want to see in this dialog box. So there's an option there to turn on and off these information columns. All right, very good. Last bit of this. If we've got multiple views open and we want to get to the same position in all of these views, there is a lot of zooming, panning, and to get to the same position in all of the views. So we've added a couple of tools there for synchronizing views. If you run the video. So again, we got the plan geometries and we got the multi-profile model. If we got one of the vertical model up, that will be affected as well. So if we click that sync view and just pan around in the multi-profile model, that will keep the plan model, and if we got a profile model as well, that will keep those in sync. And the zoom level of the views is up to us as a user, but this one is just tracking the same position in all of the views there. Another view we can synchronize is a cross-section view. So if we created a number of cross-section views, we can use that and turn on the switch for sync cross-section views. And depending on where the cursor is located in the multi-profile, that will automatically pick the right cross-section views. And as we go through this crossover, we can see that the rails is then moving from the up main to the down main track. So it's an easy way to find the cross-section views which are closest to your cursor position in that model. All right, so next one. Okay, not affecting the UK market maybe, but important to our Australian users. So on the file level, if we are using or setting up the Western Australia cubic parabolas as the transition type or spiral type, that is now supported within the geometry connector. It wasn't supported before, so that's something we've added to this version here. And with that, I hand it back to you, Robert.
Thanks, Hakan. Thanks. One thing I would say on all of these things we're going to show you, we've kind of gone on the concept of everything everywhere all at once. So rather than being a linear, we've got to show things today linear, next. But in a workflow, we think everything happening basically all at the same time. So if I got a piece of geometry, I can straight away go into the multi-profile tool if needed, and you'll see more things we can add on. But anyway, that was the concept. So let's start with Obviously, multi-profile is brand new. That's a tech preview, will be in 2024. We'll start with regression, and that was basically regression and Kant and the profile were the three big items we had to look at. And regression has been completely redesigned. It's a new way of working. It's a new tool. So what we had before was it was difficult. It was iterative. It was a bit too linear. So what we've done now is created this thing called a regression complex geometry. And it's a big box, and that box holds regression lines and points, geometry, just normal geometry elements, and Kant and speed. So again, everything everywhere all at once. You could say, hey, it's an ALG file. Yeah, but it's not. We couldn't say that, but it's that kind of container. And you see in that box on the picture there, there's a regression complex. So it holds the horizontal and the vertical. So let's have a quick overview of how this. So the regression line now, or the future, contains this complex automatically. It's not just a green dotted line. So if we do a bit of regression here using the single element tool, and I'll come along and just place it straight up here. What we can do now, we can zoom in here and we'll see the slews, so the dynamics are turned on, but we can also just use our little manipulators. I can pick this up, I can drag it, I can extend it, and you'll see in the slew trace, basically it's calculating on the fly as you move things around. Let's just use the normal geometry tools. Again, similar radius, let's make that 500 or 450, 490, whatever. If I now come along here, so I can mix and match. I'm now using quick regression. So we can use a multiple amount of different tools, and they're all being put into the complex. Do a report as normal. If you look at the profile, it automatically creates a vertical profile. So now I can do let's just do a single bit of regression here. And again, I'm seeing the lifts. I can, again, just like on horizontal, pick it up, move it around. And again, the slews, the lifts and lows are being calculated automatically. Put a spiral in, we've added in a new spiral command. We'll probably come on to that a bit later, maybe. But I can also use things like geometry connector. So if you ever use geometry connector, that all applies. In fact, any geometry tool will work on this regression complex, this box. And this box contains everything, as I said, even the table editor. So come in here, I can put in a back spiral, put in a head, so basically apply that, so that's recalculated. Close that, and the slews will all be updated to suit. And again, the dynamics will appear. Of course, Kant, we'll come on to Kant a bit later, but Kant is also part of this solution stroke problem. So again, we're going to be doing everything at the same, not the same time, but we're going to have it available to be at the same time. So regression, if you've been using 23 or 12 or 10, completely changed. Everything has now changed in the way that works. And one of the key, there's a few building blocks to that. So if we look at the underlying structure of that, there's really a couple of things. There's a point table and the regression complex dialog box. So the point table it's not just a point table. It contains all the information. So when you create your regression line, those points are not just an X, Y. They're actually the regression data. So it knows. For now, you can see on this dialog box, you've got the slew in there. We've got the lift low, we've got the Kant, existing Kant. It's got instantaneous radius. It's got the usual weight, status, offset, that kind of stuff. But it's a much more dynamic and a much more usable interface. So we've got a bit of regression here. I can go to my tools. I can open up the point table, select the regression line, and I've got this box here, and I can turn on columns. But I can also see similar information in the properties. But this point box gives me much more toys to play with. So I can come in here, I can ignore points, fix them individually. I can select a zone. So I can say, actually, no, we're just going to modify you, and I can set it to ignore whatever. We can highlight, we can get it to highlight our desirables as well. So we can do visual checks and show a delta, highlight a delta difference between slews, for instance. So you can use it as a big regression checking tool. I can select points from that list and then do a single element regression from those points. So we can look at here, minimum blurs. If we zoom in, we can just see it. So the table is not just a point list. There's much more going on. So say we can use it to analyze, just going back to this little pretty picture here, you can see the elevation, the X, Y, Z original points. But it's got slews, lifts, it's got all that information at your fingertips. Another thing we've looked at, and actually a new old function, let's call it that. I don't want to mention MX, but I'm going to. If you've ever got an existing MX or old MX users, we used to have a thing called we called it an MX plan trace or slew trace, what it's called now. Basically, it was plan regression. And we couldn't do that in the ALG world, but we can now in our new world. So we put that back, or recreated it. And I think this is a really neat tool to use. So if we go to single horizontal regression again, I can pick the start, and I'm just randomly placing some stuff here. But you get these zones, and these desirables and unacceptables, they're not just numbers, they're actually put onto the point table as well. So then the point table will know what numbers you have used and compare the slews against those numbers. We can use our nudge things, so we can increase or decrease if we've got the wrong points. So what you could also do, of course, is annotate your survey points. So then you can say, actually, I've got to go between 92 and 84 or something. Again, just going to put a curve in here. We get, again, once you've done that, you get to a nudge tool, so I can fix the curve at that point. But I've also got all the other nudge tools available. I can increase the offset or the size. I go back to my point list, and you can see down here, this is where I put that element in. I use that 80 as an unacceptable slew. So it remembers those values. And again, we could do a highlight check on those if we wanted to. So it's not just an X, Y, Z table anymore. So moving on a bit more. So we had our point table. So that gives us the regression point. So one thing to note, as soon as you create the regression line, those points are added, and all those things are added to the existing cant is also added. If you're doing from rails, for instance, you pick the left rail, pick the right rail, it will automatically calculate existing cant that we put in there. So it's much more dynamic, it's much more intelligent than it was before. So the complex is really, it's a bit like, I don't want to say check integrity, but it's check integrity, but it does a lot more than that. So if you look at this dialogue, we can see what's in there. So the top zone is horizontal, the bottom zone is vertical. So we basically calculate or create the vertical regression line automatically as soon as we create the horizontal. And we can see where things are okay, when they're not connected, when we've got other things in there. And you can see we can right mouse click and click on add, so we can add things to it. We can recalculate, we can do nudge, we can do a report, we can zoom, we can remove from a complex, which is the scissors. Well, that means it will remove it from the complex, but keep the element on plan. In this case, if you hit delete element, then that deletes it from the complex as well as the plan element. So back to our example here, and we're going to go to our tools, top to our heads up display, and get to the complex. So up here is the horizontal. If I display my vertical profile, and we can see we can highlight there the vertical. So you can see it says not connected. So again, a bit like check integrity, but much more powerful than check integrity. So we can do an arc between elements, not regression. We just place in an arc between two pieces of geometry. And because we've got our let's call it use regression, for want of a better word, this we automatically added to our complex. You may have just a microstation line or a civil piece of geometry up here. Again, we can add that, and that will be added to our complex, and it will calculate the slews. So we can pick it or highlight. I could right mouse click, recalculate. There's no need in this case, but if I moved it, I could recalculate. Do a regression report, single element, of course, that's nothing new, or we could do the whole thing. So there's nothing new in there. Again, single element, we can go back and we can select our nudge tool. We can do it afterwards, we can do it as we're doing it, or we can come back and modify to suit after we've done that. That fillet which we placed, we can delete. Again, that will be deleted from the complex as well as the actual element. If I use the scissors, that would still stay as an element, but not part of the complex. And we have this regression mode, as I said, it's on or it's off. If it's on, as soon as you place an element, be it a single element regression, or in this case, an arc between points, it will add it to this regression complex. Also, the dynamics will stay visible. It's another side effect of this, so you don't have to click on it to see the slews. They will automatically be on. Another thing on those, on the heads-up display on the slews, in I think it's preferences now, you can turn on more things to look at. You may want slew, you may want lift and lower, you may want point name, you may want instantaneous radiuses on there, but you can add on a whole list of things if you want, or just have slew, for instance, and horizontal, or just slew and lift and lower. So a lot of work has gone into the regression. I said it's a new tool. Now, we talked about the on-plan, the MX style dynamics, but we still have the curvature diagram. Again, it's been updated, it's been cleaned up a bit. So we now have our radii back rather than I think it's deflection we had in an earlier version. And we've added some color coding, for instance. So light blue will be curves, magenta are straights, dark blue is for everything else. But it works, same thing, but it does integrate with the plan as before. So we can come in here, display our curvature diagram. Everything looks pretty similar to what it was before. Again, we can select a set of points. And they'll be there. And of course, this time they're also part of the complex. So they're automatically added to my complex geometry. Again, I can pick it up, move it around just like we did on a normal horizontal element, modify it. If we look at this and we pick on the plan, for instance, you can see the points will highlight on the curvature diagram. And you get this orange, these two orange zone lines. So if I start moving, decreasing or increasing number of points, you'll see those zone lines will move, will dynamically update as well in the curvature. So you can use a combination of both, or one or the other, really. It's again, that kind of everything everywhere all at once concept. Vertical. So we looked at horizontal, we've looked at our points, and remember everything flows from this complex, this regression complex. So pretty much as soon as you start a horizontal, the vertical is created, the vertical space is created, and the vertical regression line is created. So again, we're doing this, I said, everything everywhere, this dynamic thing, which is very hard to show on a PowerPoint. So we'll run the movie. So again, on vertical, we can do a regression tool. We could do a vertical curvature diagram if we wanted to, but we can select in here. And again, we get our same, well, similar in this case, lifts, obviously desired lift, maximum. We can use nudge in here. We've also got a thing up here called maximum lower, which basically finds the lowest point and makes sure nothing goes below that. So we don't end up with any lowers at all. Everything is lifted. Again, handy tool, don't have to use it, but it can be a very quick tool to use. Back into our complex, and you see here, we've got our regression mode on. So we could just do a piece of normal just geometry, just a line. And you see some of here, I'm just going to stop that for a second if I can, and just go back. Just want to get there. You see on the end of that cursor there, I talked about on the inroads part, these new little icons for snaps. So this is part of them. That ruler means there's a civil rule being applied. So if you just see a normal little cross, I can't remember what the microstation snaps were. No, that'd just be microstation, but this means it's going to be a civil rule applied. When you see those, you know there's a civil rule being applied to any of your geometry. So we can place a line, vertical line between 2 points, and again, that is added. Again, we placed it by single element, but we can do a nudge. We can use a lift and lower. So we can pick up the start and end and move the whole thing parallel in effect. What happens if we go back to a horizontal and we'll add in an element on the end here? So our profile is just going to add on that element. It's going to dynamically update to suit that element. Everything else will stay as it is. It won't be affected. Again, we want to do something before then. So we've got this gap in between. What about this? Put a curve in here. So we can see we've got that red line in the profile, which is a gap. This is a non-collinear element in here. So we can see they're not joined. So again, we've now got the band in. So we'll place everything else before then stays exactly as it is. We can look at properties. And again, we've got our usual property points, but all this is really tied to the regression points. So this regression points really is the fundamentals of the whole thing. So it's now horizontal and vertical, fully synchronized. You don't have to use regression tools. You could use IP, you could use best fit, you could just draw stuff. I could draw microstation elements and add them to that regression complex. So it's hopefully given you just a lot more toys to play with, and also a lot better toys, because they're now actually working together rather than this linear. Well, we've got to do the points, we've got to import the regression line, then we're going to do the horizontal, and then we'll think about the vertical, and then we'll come back and do the cant. So talking about our friend cant, just want to show a couple of things. What we've done here, we've done a couple. Well, cant again has been redesigned. So I'll show first this cant and this integration with the design calculator, and then I'll just show the other way of doing cant, if you like. So we had a long time ago a design calculator in BRT, but again that was just a dialogue. You put in some numbers, you hit apply, put it into the field, and that was kind of it. But you could, in BRT, say apply cant to an element. Well, this is kind of what we've got back to here. And this works not just on, it basically works on anything as a radii you can get to the design calculator. So again, back to our little model, we'll just do a bit of single element up here, and we'll bring our dialog box back because it came off the screen. Thank you. So we get in our dynamics as normal. And if I click accept the solution, it'll take me to the next, it'll take me to the nudge dialog box. And down the bottom where it's got the radii, I can see these three little dots, these ellipsoids. That's going to take me to the design calculator. So here I can calculate speed based on a radius and an applied cant, say. So just an example. So don't hold your design to this one, but you can see the speed has been changed. Now I've done nothing here, but automatically it's created a cant point. And in my cant editor, I can see that that's a design speed of 76 and a bit, which is what it's created, already calculated. If I then say, actually, let's fill in the gaps, we'll do a complex very simply. So what's happened to that point? Has it disappeared? Has it been held? No, it's going to be held because we now track it and we know what it is. So that point, the station changed because it had to modify the curve and the spiral, straight, but the point itself is there. And I can come in here and I could edit that cant. Come in, change the radii. Again, we'll come back in, we'll use our design calculator. And the speed now has gone to 84 and 7 something. So there it is. So again, notice here, we've got the cant and the speed table all in one place. I'll come back to that in a second. But instead of going to separate dialog box, it's there now. So here we can see there's our zones and we can flip through them. So again, everything everywhere all at once. So as you're working on horizontal, vertical, the cant is also there in the background. So that's just using Design Calculator. Don't have to do that. You could just do your manual inputs we've done before. So if we look at that way, so updated, so the speed tables before in 23 and earlier, always two separate dialogues. You had to do something, come back, click on the icon, go to the speed table, just go back and forth, which was really painful. Now they're all in one place. One thing I would mention there is cant table performance is greatly improved. It is vastly improved. When you were editing cant in 23 and 1012, it was slow, let's put it that way. It is much better, much faster. And also there's this functional intelligence now. So it's been restructured. It's now just it's not fixed to stations. It now basically knows what it is. So again, if we look at this, we've changed the way it looks. We had those big boxes before. We now have these brackets, which makes it easier to see and cleaner. So the editor, as you see, you can see the blue line is the speed table. We view that at the same time, but we have projection regions as well as speed tables now all in one dialogue. And we'll come back on the projections in a minute. We can see our status, you apply cant, so that's the usual kind of data, and you can move it on, but the status is new, and you see it says all calculated there. So if we go and find our curve, and we'll change the speed. And here you can see the speed table's been updated. Haven't had to go on back to a different dialog box. It's now back there. And we'll change the applied cant at that point as well. And you notice now the status says fixed cant. It's not calculating anymore, we've fixed it. But what happens if we come in and change the radii? We'll make that 600, 750 even, close. We got a warning, but everything's been updated. So now if we look at it, there's our fixed cant in red, and it tells me fixed cant, but if I went to the right, to me point has been modified or edited. If we look at our projection, in the past we projected everything, which was kind of not that useful. But here we can project across a range, in this case across this turnout. And as I move to the right, you'll see these little graphics to show me where the projections are going to be. So again, we can do a mix and match of cant methods. So over that zone, I can have a projection. I can overwrite that as well if I want to. So I can actually type in there, make it 0, whatever. I can change the rotate about if for some reason I wanted to make that right rail. Don't know why, but I can. So again, it's all linking together. So hopefully that makes it a lot easier. And again, the cant points are not just a, curve to spiral, spiral to curve. And it's kind of, if you change the geometry, it kind of stays at that station. It now knows what it is and where it is, more importantly. So that's that on the main geometry. So on geometry, what we have in the last year and a half been working on is basically redoing cant regression and the multi-profile, introducing that. So now, as I said, we have this everything everywhere all at once concept. So you can start cant as soon as you've got a regression complex. The cant is available. It's there. You can put one element in and start designing the whole cant if you want, or do it individually. But it's all there to be designed as an interactive. Rather than this linear thing, you can do it as you go along, kind of thing. It's all into like in a circle. So reports, not much on reports really, compared to the cant and regression tools. We've got reports as before. We've just added in We've been revised, we've added in some. So now instead of having maybe the horizontal and vertical in one and the cant and maybe the slews, whatever, in another one, we've started to deliver combined reports. And again, we can do count stations or an interval, include event points. That hasn't changed at all. It's always been there. We've been looking at annotating these in millimeters. So rather than 0.016, whatever, in metric, in meters. So we're making sure they come out right. And again, one thing I didn't mention on the display of the heads-up display of the cant or the slews on the dynamics, again, you can set those to use subunits, millimeters, so they'll come out as millimeters rather than 0.0016 or whatever. So again, just combining a whole bunch of new reports and reports which didn't exist before. So, slew, lift low, existing cant, design cant, that kind of stuff. All of these, of course, expert Excel, and again, you can do many in one go. You have to do one alignment. You can pick a whole selection, multiple select, and report on all of those at one go. So cant reporting, yeah, it's very similar. I'm just going to wind this on a bit. So again, interval, we can include events. They're just variations on a theme. We've just added in more reports. That's all. So this case is horizontal, vertical, and cant. Grade, left rail, right rail kind of stuff. Left cant, right cant. So that's not too much fun. I want to move on because I want to get on to Hakan needs to talk to some stuff at the end. Drawing production. I'm just going to talk about these. We've added in some annotation things now, so we can annotate on plan or profile. And again, the dynamics I mentioned, you can set up the user preference to display what you'd like to see on when you hit that. Select your geometry. Do you want just slew? Do you want just slew and lift? You may not need point number. You may not need instantaneous radius or existing cant, but you can just turn that off. But you can annotate using the annotation, element annotation. And you can set up an annotation. One is delivered, so it'll do slew, lift and lower. We can do the same for vertical. There it is. I'm just going to wind this on a bit. And we can use civil labeler. If you've never used this, this is quite a handy tool now. And we can do custom labels and stuff. Very handy in profile, I might say as well. Profile, I'm just going to talk this one. We've now included, we've changed the way basically lift and lowers work for the annotation. You won't know any difference. What we deliver will be already working, but now we're actually linking into the regression line itself and not doing a measure from a proposed geometry to an existing geometry. Say it's from your regression line, your existing low rail to a proposed geometry. It's now using the regression line data itself, which contains much more information, of course. Localization, so turnout bending. We've worked with Network Rail on this. So now we are bending to their approved method. They will deliver the libraries. We do not deliver the libraries. In fact, they've been removed. Any UK library has been removed from 24. So never will control that, but that's now been authorized. I think it's still going through. I think it's through the approval process. I think it's finished that, but it's internally with Network Rail. But the new, there's 3 new turnout libraries. They will be delivering and controlling, and we will bend and certified by them that everything is good. So that will be used in 2024, the bending method. UK Rail Workspace, we talked about this a year ago. It's still ongoing. We're almost there. We certainly want to issue this officially towards the end of the year. I've got a couple more bits to do, but I think we're almost there on that one. At the moment, if you want a test copy, you can contact me and I can send you the files, but it is work in progress. So be aware of that one. Do not use on a project, test with care. Things may change, usual caveats, but that will be available via software downloads, hopefully by the time we release 2024 as well. So that's count regression with that. The next big thing we've really done is a bit of low voltage assets. So I'm going to hand you over to Hakan to talk about this.
All right, thanks a lot, Rob. Yeah, so low voltage assets, you may or may not have heard of this or is aware of it. It was added a couple of years ago, and the actual schematic model is not new to 2024, but we thought it was maybe worth highlighting it because you may or may not know about this one. Anyway, so to create a schematic model, we need a topology model to do that. So together with the horizontal geometries and the topology, we can generate a schematic. And the topology model is like a link node type of model. So the start of the geometry, the end of the geometry is a node, and the piece of railway in between is what we call in the topology an edge. So if we run the movie there. So I got two identical geometries in here. The only difference between those is that one contains turnouts and the other one do not have any turnouts in it. So to create the topology model where we have turnouts is quite easy. We're just selecting one of the geometries and we'll find all of the other ones through the turnouts. If we don't have any turnouts, we can create the topology, in this case for the main track, and then use a connecting feature there to add the sidings to the main track. So in the end of this little exercise, it will be exactly the same thing as if we would have turnouts. So now we got the topology. So we can then say, all right, so generate the schematic model. So that creates a new internal model and put in the nodes and edges into that. And we can now start customizing the layout of the schematic if we want to. Like in this case, we're grabbing those vertices and move them around and get those two siding tracks stacked on top of each other. We could round off the corners and do a little bit of more customization of the layout. However, the intelligence between the schematic and the physical is handled by a scale ratio. So if we stretch or compress any of the edges within the schematic model, that scale ratio will then automatically be maintained and keep the relationship between the physical and the schematic. Right, next one. So this is an improvement to 2024. Previously, when we were placing any of the low voltage asset objects, we were requiring the rail track object, which contains the rails, because we have an option there saying we want to measure the offset or the elevation relative to the closest rail. However, we've removed that requirement of having the rail object present, which means if it's not there, we will use the center line to measure the offset and elevation. So run the movie. So in this example, we have rails on the main track, but on the two sidings, we don't have any rails. So if we test that, we can do a little example here of an exit signal from the second siding. So place that somewhere there. But to create that signaling point, we need a clearance point or falling point, depending on what we're calling it. So let's ask the track designer to put that in. So there is a tool for that, which will create that point there with a double offset rule. So that is referenced into my low voltage model. And we can open the schematic model that we just created there. So we got the plan, the schematic 3D, all three models in the same dgen at the same time. So if we're running the LVA tools for placing, and in this case, an isolation joint, which we rule back to the clearance point, and then continue to place the signal, and we will rule that signal to that isolation joint or axle counter, depending on the system we are running. Now we can move on and place a balise. And we can actually use the schematic model for placing those objects. We rule the balise to the isolation joint, and Then we can move on, place a location case, a couple of cable pits, and finally put in a cable trough as well. And of course, we are then snapping those ones to the cable pits and putting relationship to the geometry with the offset elevation and so on for all of these. So a little example there, put some of the main components around the signaling point, fairly easy with those LVA tools. And now, as we said, we are not requiring rails anymore for those ones. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Hakan. Right, that's pretty much on schedule. We've got 5 minutes on the official time. So that's what's coming in OpenRail 2024. It's out this year. And I can end the slideshow.
So there's some thank you for that. There's some questions in the chat. Have you got time for those?
Yeah, it's on the other screen. So David, I need more screens.
So
Let's have a look.
there's one
Can
from
we apply
Patrick.
Kant?
Can you see that yet?
Yep, and we can do that now. So adverse Kant. We're also next year have another deeper dive in the way we do that. So there'll be more coming on adverse Kant in the 2025 release. We've had to get the framework in there first. You can do it manually, but there'll be better tools, and hopefully with our new big box of tricks now, we can do much more. So that will be, yes, that will be, it's available, but it's also going to be coming, and we will look at how we're going to do that. It's doable, but it's a bit long-winded at the moment. We want to make it easier than that.
Just on that
yes,
one.
To Patrick, yeah, sorry.
Do the Celts can you provide Kant deficiency as well? Or is that not provided? Okay, great.
Yeah. Everything you normally want, equilibrium, deficiency, rate of change, all that stuff. Yeah.
Okay. There's a query there from Justin Davis. So you can see that
Can,
custom reports.
You can make custom reports in XML. Yes, you can export to Excel. I'm not sure about the SD calculator.
Yeah, I don't think you should use that anymore, by the way, Justin. So if you want to chat about that, I'm more than willing to do that.
Yeah, but you can dump it out to Excel. That was one of the biggest things we had from some of the PWI members, well, all of them actually, was you have to do 2 or 3 reports and then copy bits out and then stick them in, and so more will come on that as well. We need to do more clearance reports, to be honest. So what we're trying to do is combine those. So there's less cutting and pasting. I know you have your spreadsheets, but we'd like to remove the problem of cutting and pasting and maybe error. And when you start typing stuff, you can get it wrong sometimes. So we cut out that if we can. So yeah, it can be created. You need XML SPI or whatever. If you take one of ours, which is similar, which is a style sheet, an XSL file, do not work on the master, copy it. Yeah, give it a new name. And then if you know XML, it's easy. Well, not easy, but if you've got an XML guru there, you can put those together. So Kieran, stationing tool. If you mean by view stationing, I guess, that's all now part of the annotation. Didn't show that because it's not new, it's been in there, so it's purely a new thing. But yeah, you can annotate whatever you wish, actually, and it's using either like a plan or profile, the geometry annotation, or like the boxes, the frames underneath, depends how you do it in a sheets and stuff like that. But stationing, yes, and you have various different options. One at 100, one at 50, one at 10, left or right, it's up to you. We will, in the workspace, we'll be delivering a lot of examples, and some we're looking at now having a preferred options. So we'll have a folder called preferred or something like that, where they'll be the ones you go to first, because they'll be the ones that there's people that said these are the ones we use all the time, rather than a list of 20 different things you've got no idea what you're using. So, but yeah, station's still available. Comparing version 1 or version 2 of an alignment, you can pick 2 different, you can pick multi-alignments to do reports on, Justin, just going down there. Oh yes, Hawkins answered that one. Yeah, thank you. straighten and alter its length by using an arc to element. You can do the Stuart arc to element. I'm trying to think back, Stuart. Sorry.
Yes, currently when you regress the element, when you regress an element, you can't adjust it. If you try and float a curve off it, it is straight. It just won't alter the length of the regressed element.
Yeah, if you do to and from now, because the whole way regression has changed, we have this box. Everything's a complex. You should now. Maybe that tool is missing. I seem to remember that one. But you can do anything you want with geometry now, and it will modify.
Cool.
I'd have to check on because we have to an element or from an element now. And remember that you can have the spirals are not just part of the curve; they're also part of a straight if need be.
Yeah. Okay. Just ignore spirals. Keep the simple case. It currently doesn't work, but it will next time.
Yeah, I think that's in the list. I can't know if we changed that or not. I'll have to check that one, Stuart. I think Kavanch was looking. I'll ask Kavanch. Yeah. Tom, yeah, NR60 Mark II, whatever. I'll be talking to Phil Seymour and Mark Kidd, whatever they're working on. Those have been, so we got the old 56s, of course, and the old 60s are now called, I forgot what the new name is now, I've forgotten. But there's 3 new libraries, well, 2 old ones and a brand new Mark II. They're still working on it as far as I'm aware. But they've all been validated and verified by NR, not us. We give them the calculations and they say yes or no. If it doesn't work, we come back to us and we fix it basically. So now those 3 are ready to, when they finish their final sign off, will be available, I guess, on somewhere on their webpage where the REPW joins and the rest of the stuff is. But I haven't got a time on that. Geometry connector anchor, that missed the boat. It's 25, unfortunately. It's just basically there was too much to put in the boat, and the boat was going to sink if we added one more thing. It's high on our list. We know what we want. We know what people want. It's there. It's, yeah, as I say, it's way up on the list, but it just didn't make it. All the other tools are available, say best fit lines and stuff, but Nudge is there. What regression? Why the regression line is after adding geometry from curvature? Why does the regression line keep changing? The regression line is changing if you on the video, if you mean, because that's just showing the sloughs. So regression line in that case has an exaggeration. So I may have done 20 or 50 times, I'm not sure what. So that regression line, the survey point's not moving, obviously, but that dynamic regression line, you can have a scale on it. If you made it 1, you wouldn't see it move. If you make it 50, then it exaggerates. You can see dynamically if you zoom far out where changes are. So as you move an element, you pick up that end of that straight, for instance, whatever, and you drag it along. That's recalculating constantly because it's part of the complex. The complex controls everything. Well, the points really control everything, but the complex is feeding off the points. So it gives you this much more dynamic, hopefully a more dynamic feedback. And I said, you've got horizontal, you've got vertical being computed at the same time, as well as cant and speed. So we try to get this all, it's a bit hard to show in one thing, as well as also linking into the multi-profile validation tool, the analysis tool, to see if you've done anything wrong with the geometry connecting in, for instance,
Okay, Robert, I think one last one. I think Ben, you had your hand up. Was it that query you had there about can you make more than one alignment against a complex alignment?
Yeah, I had that one, but there was one other one I was quite interested in. Obviously, really interesting stuff. So thanks for that. Really found it helpful. Can you, with the multi-profile view, are you able to produce your drawings and your drawing workflow off the back of that, like you normally would do with your boundaries that you produce in your profile?
You can put them in there, but the actual annotation we haven't looked at. Basically, what we want to look at is how we create those drawings, and that's on our 25 again. It didn't make the boat because we were going to sink, but it's on Hawkins, the project manager for this. It's lucky he's online because he can actually tell you. But it's on our 25 bucket list.
Yeah, it will come back to the part 2 of this work. So the design part of it was for 24, and the drawing production side of it is the next step.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That sounds good. Because I know at the moment, if you break a complex alignment, you kind of lose all your links to drawings and stuff like that.
Yeah. So this is again, it's a tech preview. So on that, especially on the multi-profile thing, if you see anything and you think, hey, that's cool, or that might be a good idea, let us know. It's gone in as a tech preview because we put it in there, subject to change. We think it's good. We think it's going to work, but you may say, no, it doesn't work at all. Hopefully not. But what we've shown people before is pretty cool. But maybe other things. We know we've got other things to do. Is we'd like to be able to export the report, for instance, on that check-in dialogue, where it does dynamics. Right mouse click, send a report, for instance. To give you a report or an Excel or something like that. But more things we want to do. We had those rules in there. Hakan showed, show me anything over 100 million red. Well, we'd like to increase maybe that as well. But I say it's come text preview. We've done half of it, but drawing production is certainly, again, along with the good old geometry connector, on our top list for next year.
Okay.
Thanks for that. No, really, really good. Cheers.
Brilliant. Yeah,
hopefully it's been really good, David. We're excited about it. I know it's a complete change to BRT. It's a complete change, actually, all those tools we've shown from what was the 23 version. And we've been talking to those PWI members who we've been talking to. We think we got something good, but hopefully, the proof will be when we deliver it and people say, yeah.
And the rollout is due when, did you say, Robert?
I can't put a date, and hopefully end of October. That's
okay,
hopeful. Well. But we said it's all looking good for now, but you never know what's around the corner sometimes. But we're on heavy on check-in mode. We've pretty much gone through most of the bug fixing, so we're on validation, and our checking team are kicking it pretty hard now. So we should be on track. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thanks to both of you for presenting today. I think that was really appreciated by everyone who was on the call, and I definitely took away the fact that you were saying it was everything, everywhere, all at once. So
that's the plan. That's what we came up with a meeting April 2 years ago, where we wanted this thing where you could. It's hard to show on a PowerPoint. You can't show everything. I'm doing this and I'm going to do that. You don't have to, but instead of being this linear, we're trying to combine all this information and so you can make better judgments and hopefully work better and get a better design out of it.
Brilliant. Thank you.
We'll do part 3 next year, maybe.
Oh, we'll take that. Thank you. All right.
Thanks, David. Thanks all. Thanks,
you.
Hakan. Appreciate the help. Really do. Thanks all.